Okay, so here's what you need. Obviously your PlayStation 3, starting from left to right. Thermal compound, preferably Artic Silver 5, but 3 will do. Wedger, just in case you have to go between plastic. Screwdrivers can scratch plastics, of course. Set of flat blade screwdrivers of different sizes. Small crosshead, medium crosshead, another medium crosshead, small crosshead, Stanley blade, any type, just to cut the warranty seal properly. A screw grabber, be careful, that can actually rip your thumb off, quite literally. Security bit required, which is to get the bottom bits off. Set of tweezers, a brush, optional upgraded hard drive, isopropyl alcohol required to clean the thermal paste, set of gloves, because as you know by now, thermal paste is poisonous, tissues to wipe the thermal paste, and a bag to put all the stuff in when you've done with it, because you don't want to get on the carpet. I'm now going to get a rag, I'm going to put it on this floor, like an operating theatre. Okay, so begin by removing the Phillips screwdriver under this little tab here on the bottom. It completely comes out, and this cover can now just come straight off to the left. You'll see that there's a small little handle here. If you just pull it up very carefully, bring that towards you. That'll now provide you with the hard drive. First time I've seen it, it's an Hitachi, and it is a 250 gigabyte. Well, I'm going to put a 500 in. So for now, leave that to the side along with the screw and the cover. Now you've done that, we got to look at removing these. Before removing any of these covers, get your security bit screw, and you'll see there are 3 of them here. 1, 2, 3. Very carefully remove them. They should just come straight out. If you don't have one of these, just let me know and I can tell you which one you need. But basically, it's one of these. It's very small and it's got a space in the middle so that the little spike, let's call it, can fit through. Hence the term security bit. So remove these and put them to the side as well. Now obviously, if you're on an extended warranty, don't remove this, but because it's on the bottom, I'm just going to rip it straight off. And I can use IPA later on to clean up the residue that it leaves behind. So we'll just start peeling that. So I'm going to leave that there as well. Just one little tip. If you're doing this upstairs, like I'm doing, and there's like any hair or anything like that, use a bit of tape, and then just very gently, one that doesn't stick, electrical tape's the best one, and then just dab any hairs you see, and then put them in your bag. So I've already done that because there was a tiny little thing there. But what I'm going to try and do is go outside using an air pump, which I didn't mention before. So yeah, let's remove these. Now have it so that the PlayStation 3 logo on the bottom is facing you, so the hard drive cover will be away from you. Remove the following covers. Now, just to note, you can't model up the grip covers with the flat plastic covers, because if you look at the shape of them, they're slightly different. If I put one next to one another, you can see that's a star and that's a square in terms of the teeth. So we're now going to remove all these screws and we'll be right back. Now, here's a little pro tip. Remember this, the PlayStation 3 logo is facing you. So very carefully move all the screws to somewhere else, maintaining where they go. Because that way when you put it back together, it's a little easier. Now you can actually see that the screws are the same length, but you can't take the chance. If you put a too long screw in, you'll rip it straight through the thread into the plastic, and that's horrible. It's a bit of a cock-up. So, here's what you're going to do now. Very carefully, I'm going to do this two-handed. Hold the PlayStation 3 and flip it back towards you. And then we're going to take the top cover off. Be really careful doing this because there might be a ribbon at the front. Hey, here we go. So here's the cover off. You can see a bit of dust here. Now, on the internet, a lot of YouTubers say, oh, no, just clean the fan here and take the power supply out and, you know, just blow it. Well, that's not worth it. You might as well not take it apart at all because it actually goes all inside the bit of the heatsink here. Now, what I would say is don't follow the next set of steps if you're not comfortable. After we've removed the power supply, we're going to be making the board come out. Last thing you want to do is break your PlayStation. This is a bit more, you need a bit more experience first. That's not me sounding harsh, it's because you've got to know what you're doing. So we're now going to remove the power supply and we'll go on to the next step from there. Right, so you can see the power supply's out. Just one thing to say, when you remove the 2 screws and you disconnect this and you disconnect that one there from the power supply, make sure that you evenly pull up, because there are 2 pins here, and if you bend it back and snap that, it's game over. Now you'll have to somehow recreate that connector, which would be very difficult. So we're now going to look at the removal of the CD drive, I should say the Blu-ray drive, and then we'll look at the fan assembly. What you need to do next is, once you've taken the power supply out and the fan, there are 2 screws, just remove that, and then right there is where it connects under the tape. You can obviously put the tape back, I advise to, but especially around the CD drive, but in some places it's all right. Anyway, so what you then do is you carefully remove that ribbon, you remove that from the CD drive, which is there, and there's 1 screw there that takes this out. Now remember that this front bit will come off too. You can remove it, it's just there on the bottom, which we have to do. So you very gently just pull on it, and when I say gently, I mean like no pressure whatsoever. And there you go, the front's off, and we can give it a lovely clean. It does actually mount on the front of the BD drive. Anyway, so let's continue. So what I've done there is I had to remove 2 antennas which were on those brackets there. I've kept them order. Black is on the left, right is on the white, 2 screws there. Now you then have to remove the 2 screws here and here. When it's on the case, you'll see where they go. And there's 1 there, there's 1 there, and there's also 1 there. And then it will very gently, without effort, it will come out. If it doesn't, check the screws. In fact, they've got arrows for the ones you need to remove. Don't mistake that, that's number 1. So now we're going to get this metal bit off. We're going to take this off, and we're going to look at the thermal paste on this beast. Right, the main board's off. I thought they learnt from this mistake with the previous one. Look! That's missing its thermal paste on 1 bloody pad. It's ridiculous. This is the problem. You see, the average consumer doesn't know this, and they shouldn't be expected to. But you can see there, now I can't actually quite read it, but I think that one might be, that's probably, hang on a minute. Yeah, that's the GPU, and that's the CPU. Because that one shares the memory. But I think they learned from their previous, or predecessor, to put it there too, but yeah, we're going to have to reapply this. So, if you've got this far and you're here, well done, brilliant. But now it's going to be time to have the gloves and our Artic Silver, and we're going to clean this puppy right out. Look at that, doesn't that look much better? I don't even think the camera can give it justice. So, yeah, that whole part was missing thermal paste, which is quite funny really, because you can see there as well it was missing it. I don't know how they did this and like in the factory, but the way you're supposed to really do it is you put it around the CPU or the GPU, and you spread it out, and then you put a tiny dab on there, and then it just creates a cushion. So that's what I'm going to do when I reapply it now. Got to obviously clean this bit now, so I'll do that and I'll put it back together, and yeah, we'll start overhauling the power supply, take this apart and check the gears and everything like that. Clean this out, and you've got a brand new PlayStation 3. So I've cleaned the heatsink up, it looks pretty much brand new. I didn't take the power supply apart because it's got weird like edges or like teeth, but I've cleaned it, it doesn't look bad anyway. As you can see, I've done that already. That's ready for new thermal paste. Taken apart the CD drive, and I've cleaned the laser mechanisms, cleaned out and dusted all of that, cleaned that out. Basically, we're all done. And the fan, as you can see. Time to put the new thermal paste on, get the heatsink sorted, and we're done. Okay, so we're now at the stage where we're going to be putting the thermal paste onto the GPU and the CPU. Gloves are on again, and this is going to be a bit more tricky because you've actually got to put it on. You'll see pictures, so I'm going to cover it all on the GPU, or the RISC CPU and the cell engine. And you've actually got to flip it up and over, so you've got to be careful, because if it's not a very viscous thermal paste, it can go everywhere. And I'm just going to say one thing, you get any of this on the motherboard anywhere, you need this, or your PS3 is going to die, because thermal paste is conductive, and it will short out parts of the motherboard, and the next thing you know, bang. So be really careful when doing this, and basically treat it like bread and butter. You just put it on the bread, nice and thin amount, unless you want to be a bit, you know, enjoy yourself. But yes, I'm going to get the thermal paste on, and then we'll flip it on, start assembling it back together, and put it up where it lives. Okay, so you can see that I've put the thermal paste on. I put 2 pea-sized blobs as well in the middle for the heatsink to spread it out. Very important to make sure you cover all of them, obviously, because you want maximum conductivity of heat. You can see that some of it went down there on the right, but because this is glue sealed on the integrated heatsink unit, it's not going to cause a problem. So I'm now going to get the heatsink, very carefully get the motherboard and put it on top. And you can see I've cleaned those again because they were outside, they're shiny. And then we're going to bolt this down with there and the job is done. We shouldn't have to ever do this again to the PlayStation 3. So yeah, I'll get back to you once I've got this bit on and the fan on. Just before I do that, one huge bit of advice. When you take this out for the first time, check around for any thermal paste, because when you're wiping it, you could accidentally touch it with the cloth. Now, for instance, I've just seen there's a little bit down there. So I'm going to use some IPA and I'm just going to clean that off. It may not cause too much of an issue, but it is one possible reason that your PS3 could die as well, because as it heats up, it can actually jump traces. I know they varnish the top of it, but worth doing and worth checking. Only get the bits you can. Ta-da! Easy peasy! Feels heavy with all that thermal paste. Joke. So yeah, make sure you put the metal tray where my thumb is first, then these. And now what you can do is, because you've got all this back on, is put the fan back on its assembly. So we can just sit this back like that. And we can just screw that back in. It just gets rid of 2 extra screws. And then what we're going to do is basically put it back in the case, put the screws back on, and job done. Well, it's all back together now. This is the nerve-wracking bit. Let's hope it works. Look at that. Brilliant. But yeah, there we go. So it's working. It's restored. The fan's kicked in. Yeah, it's flowing. So we're just going to make sure that we get everything put back together now and get it all set up. Got to change a hard drive yet, but there you go. It's working. Right, so the new hard drive's in its caddy, so we're now going to very carefully put that back in. Push it all the way in. Good connection. Go and grab the screw and the plate. And the plate just goes like that. It slides in, remove the top cover, drop the screw in there, and guess what, guys? This PS3 is ready to rock and roll. It's all back together, it turns on. We're just going to plug it into a screen now and make sure that there's someone at home. That's because I put in the hard drive. So what we're going to have to do is wipe the drive and we can rebuild the system. That I would expect because it's a different hard drive. So it's like, what? Right, here we go. Right, I've put it into recovery mode, so let's just hope that it does restore. If not, then we'll have to download the update from Sony. Oh, there we go. Right, it's found it. So I'll leave that to restore and recover, and we got a working PS3. Alright, it's rebooted itself. I'm just putting the games away. Alright, there we go, installing. So that's good, so it's not bricked. I have had this happen once before, but I didn't have much luck. But that was because the, I believe the hard drive was failing. And, oh, I remember, I changed my hard drive in my old PS3, and it wouldn't install the update because the hard drive was failing, but I couldn't figure it out. There you go. We're back in action. Right, so now I'm just going to sign into PSN and drop down. Okay, so this is how you do the fan test. So you have to hold down the eject button while the console is off and plug your PlayStation 3 in. There we go. There's a good amount of airflow there, no sign of dust coming out. So we're going to still give it the clean. That's good, the light's now blinking. That should then beep twice. There we go. You can now just turn your PS3 off and plug it in normally.